North Cap to prove that the satellites were working and that he had LoRa reception the whole time. And I think that was kind of amazing. Did that in 3 weeks, which I thought was brief. He's going to be talking, of course, about enabling massive IoT projects with satellites. Please give it up for the VP and General Manager of EchoStar Mobile, the fabulous, the amazing Telemaco Melia!
Thank you, Justin. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here. Just a curiosity for the people that know satellite, and mentioning what Justin said before, we managed to close the link this summer at 71 North. So really the satellite at the horizon. That was a fantastic personal trip, and also managed to have a professional experience, which was kind of unique. So back to our business. When we got invited by Vinke, and he really pushed us to be here, and we are happy he did it, we thought of what we could be talking to you, and what could be the message from the satellite industry. So the goal is really today to talk to you about how digital transformation comes together when you mix satellite and massive IoT. So let me start explaining massive IoT. So credits of this slide go to Semtech and Remy. We got this presentation done in July at the LoRaWAN World Expo this summer in Paris. And we had a great panel. And the draw line was LoRaWAN has been doing a great job in bringing to market a standard which is flexible and modular that enables public, private, community networks. But there is one piece missing. Today, with LoRaWAN terrestrial gateways, you can cover only about 10% of the available space. And if you really want to get to the 100% coverage, then the only thing that you can do is use satellite. So that was the discussion we had at that time. I'm piggybacking on this discussion because I think it's important to recognize and assert that massive IoT is only available through this type of technology. Now, the question is then, what happens if doesn't change? Yeah, no. What happens if I need to talk to people that tell me, yeah, very nice, but I have a digital transformation journey I need to do, and how can you help me? So we have been spending the past months since we launched pre-commercial services talking to people and understanding what type of requirements these people have in terms of digital transformation, how I can collect the data, what can I do with the data, and how can you help me? And we've been essentially getting to 4 big families of problems to solve. The first one is infrastructure. It has to be cost effective. There are many use cases, especially in regions which are or not covered or have low density of sensors, where deploying gateways is commercially unattractive. So the question we have is, can you provide coverage in these places where we can't deploy a gateway simply because it's too complex or it's too expensive? Then assuming that you have coverage, then the next question is, are the data actionable? And actionable means really that it's not only a matter of collecting the data, so making sure that your temperature sensor is sending data to the cloud, but it's also how do I take actions on the data I collected? We think that collecting the data is half of the job. It may be enough in some use cases, but in other use cases, you need to take actions. You may want to, for instance, close a valve on the field, and then you need to be able to talk to the sensors in the field. The other questions we get very frequently is data freshness. So how old is the data? Obviously, if for some use cases, collecting one information per day is enough. In other use cases, you need to be sure that this information is there, available, and is fresh enough. So if I have to wait for hours before I can receive the data and then take actions, that's probably not going to work. And then the last piece which is probably something that before was not even considered, is on the pause or on the move. It's easy to collect data when you are working with an asset which is in the field and it doesn't move. It's more complex when you need to get the data from the sensor which is moving, which is actually what I did this summer. I wanted to prove that I was able to track for 9,000 kilometers a sensor moving across Europe. And it's in cellular networks, this exists. In LoRaWAN network, that doesn't exist yet. So there is a gap there to fill, and a gap that people need to solve now. So let me go a bit more in details on some of the use cases that we have been working through. So the first statement is that obviously satellite, compared to terrestrial, provides continuous and cost-effective coverage in two conditions. The first one, which is probably easy to understand, is remote locations. The second one is underserved areas. There are conditions where deploying a gateway is not cost-effective because I don't have enough sensors connected to that gateway. And in these conditions, satellite is very effective. Let me give a few examples. And again, examples that we have been touching with hands, people testing and experimenting. Railway is a good one. We realized that there is a whole new market in rail track monitoring. You need to monitor temperature because temperature makes the rails getting longer or shorter depending on the time of the day, and therefore this can create impacts in the operations of the trains. We have been talking to people in Brazil that say we have a huge problem because over summer we have to stop the trains because it's too hot and the infrastructure doesn't support vehicles going through. We have been talking to people that need to detect shocks and cracks in the rail. So it's all a set of problems where you have constraints in deploying a terrestrial network because you are, you cannot put a mast wherever you want. You need to comply to regulations on the rail track. Often different departments working in different directions where you get crazy just to, electricity is somebody and then civil work is somebody else, and you cannot bring the two people together. So the only efficient way of providing monitoring sensors in this use case is really satellite. Solar farms is another good example. We have been talking to people that need to control the tilt of the panels over the day. And their big problem is that they cannot go through the internet connection of the customer because that will be a cybersecurity risk. And they need enough, of out-of-band channel management channel to be able to send data. So again, their satellite is a very convenient gear because solar farms are usually in the middle of nowhere. The other thing I mentioned before is on the pause and on the move. So today, we have some national networks. We do have regional networks, private networks, but there is roaming gears that enable people to move. But today, you have a lot of spots where there is nothing. So the question is, how can I ensure that there is, service continuity of people that move assets from point A to point B? You might have connectivity in the warehouse, but when the asset leaves the warehouse, there is nothing in the middle. So yes, you do have some national networks in a few countries in Europe, but that is not continuous. So what you really want to do is have a single subscription that enables people to travel freely across several countries. So logistic and transportation is an obvious use case. There is another one, which is, again, talking to people and you discover new things, is the personal tracking. For summer or winter activities, we realize that there is a need to follow people. And LoRa has been one of the technology used in these cases, not the only one, but is available. And it proves really that following the persons and giving the option also to find people in distress is a market that has great potential. If you go in ski resorts in winter, yes, you do have your 4G connection and you have full power, but as soon as you move out of the known tracks, then there is nothing around. The next thing is, as I mentioned before, is actionable data. So we have been talking to people and it's primarily utilities, where they need the data, obviously, because they need to analyze what is available, but they also need the capability of sending commands down in the field. So the reason to do that is that if they need to close a valve or they need to switch an actuator, they need the capability of doing that. Otherwise, the data has half of the value because they know the problem, but they cannot act on the problem. And the last one, which is really interesting, is deliver the data in real time, anytime, anywhere. So imagine people collecting data in a warehouse. They need to leave and they need to transport the asset to another warehouse. They are missing the fact that they can transfer the real time. So to us, the goal is really have a compatible network, not compatible, cooperate with terrestrial network in a way that the service is seamless, and in the same way you collect real-time data over the terrestrial network, you also collect data in real time over the satellite network. And asset tracking here is really one of the key use cases that we are looking at. Now, if you need to go away from this short presentation and go back and say what are the 3 things that I really did learn today. So first of all, satellite provides the solution for truly wide coverage for LoRaWAN. That's the only way you can achieve that. Real-time satellite LoRaWAN is possible, and we have been demonstrating that. And this means that you can really expect comparable performances to terrestrial networks. And satellite makes low-density LoRaWAN deployments economically possible. I mentioned before a few use cases. You really have to think, okay, it's not only where I don't have coverage, it's also where I have a very low amount of sensors that I need to deploy. Usually satellite is not good for smart cities, not because technologically it doesn't work, it's because you have environmental changes that you cannot control. You need to have, line of sight visibility, and if you are in front of a big building, you don't have the angle to look at the satellite. So smart cities clearly is not the use case, but in anywhere else where low density is a question, then you are sure that satellite can work. So, the goal was to deliver you a message, what transformation means, what Massive IoT means, and how satellite plays a role into that. I've been pretty much sales agnostic, but let me conclude here with who we are, what we do, essentially transition to take the discussion offline. So EchoStar Mobile is the first and only pan-European LoRaWAN compatible network. We are a network operator. We use the specific word compatible because we have been extending the LoRaWAN standard with specific things like regional parameters to be able to work over satellite. But the goal is really to be part of an ecosystem. We are working with the LoRa Alliance to standardize some of the changes. So it's not that we work in a vacuum. We are really looking at benefiting from the existing ecosystem. We are the only real-time bidirectional LoRaWAN compatible network operator available today. The satellite is geostationary, is up in the sky. Service today is pre-commercial, and we are planning to go commercial by the end of the year. We are running what we call early adopter program. So people, partners can come to us. We onboard them in a program where they have free access to technology and service. And we onboard the people to test the technology in their use cases. It's not about, ooh, testing satellite, it works. No. Can I test satellite in my use case, in my specific conditions, to be able to understand if it really works? And it's not only testing from a technological standpoint, it's also understanding from a commercial standpoint if the solution is viable for you. We are pretty much customer-driven. So we have a roadmap, we know where we want to go, but we need to work with you to understand if what we are thinking is the right direction or if we change direction. You saw probably on the wall over there one of our device, the module, is a certified module, the EM2050. It's a dual-mode device, actually free band in the sense that it supports satellite as well as terrestrial 868 and 915, and is able to support the S-band, which is our licensed spectrum on a global basis. Europe is the first market, and then we'll see announcements about additional markets opening up in the next future. So, booth A24, I believe, we are there. There was a huge traffic yesterday. We were pretty happy how it went the first day, and looking forward to talk to you later after lunch or in the afternoon. I reserved a few minutes for questions, if there is any. I don't know if this is the way you want to do it, but otherwise we are at the booth.
It's probably easier, since we don't have a microphone that we can walk around, that people just come over to you after the talk.
Sure.
I do have a question for you, since I'm up here on stage. I was wondering, where do you have the LoRa device mounted on your motorcycle?
In the back.
Just on the back, on the top?
No, I had a case in the back.
Oh, you just put it in the case?
Yeah, I just put it in the case. It was pretty easy. Battery operated, so...
Awesome.
Good job.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause for Telemaco. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So if you want to ask him any questions, feel free to head over. Telemaco will be over here. I'm now sending him over there, so he'll be able to answer your questions. We'll be back here in a little bit less than 10 minutes, I believe, to talk about going from sensor to safety using LoRaWAN for office air quality monitoring. So looking forward to that. See you all in a little bit.